If you've ever noticed mold or dampness in your home, particularly in areas where you or your family members sleep, then I'd highly recommend that you listen to today's episode. My guest today is Martin Mattson. He's a biohacker with an extraordinary story on how exposure to mold affected not just his, but his family's health. Alongside this, we also delve into a wide range of topics, including what happens if you're exposed to mold, if high LDL and ApoB cholesterol is bad for you, biohacking tools for better health, Martin's view on the use of statins, how to reduce toxins in daily life, how to test for and remove mold in your home, how to recover from mold exposure, the best way to track health metrics, how to fix fatigue and brain fog, supplementation and liver values, how to heal your gut, what are detox fats and why they're important, the benefits of activated charcoal, saturated fat and detoxification, and whether or not you should stop taking creatine. Disclaimer, many of the views discussed in this podcast do not align with that of the mainstream healthcare narrative. This is an alternative viewpoint, and therefore implementing any of the approaches outlined in this podcast, you do so at your own risk. Please always consult your healthcare practitioner. Unfortunately, due to a technical error, this episode cuts off the last 20 minutes of our episode. However, there is still plenty for you to dig into. Please also check out Martin's work via his Instagram and website, which will be linked in the show notes. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Martin Mattson. What's a biohacker?
A biohacker is someone who changes the environment inside of yourself and around yourself to reach peak performance, to make your body work optimally. That's the definition that Dave Asprey came up with once upon a time. And there are people call it different things nowadays. Like I call myself a bio-optimizer, and I focus a lot on the supplements and the lifestyle and the diet that you can change mainly. And you can do a lot of change their body that way, but biohacking also includes things like gadgets, red lights, blue lights, workout machines, and rings that measure your heart rate, and all those kinds of things. And some people take it to the extreme, and they're taking ice baths and they're shooting lasers into their brains to stimulate different parts of the brains. There's a huge amount of things that you can do, and it's all really exciting. But what I want to do is I want to take the kind of middle class, normal person who hadn't heard about biohacking before and make it more mainstream, because there's so much untapped potential there. And cool. We get exposed to a lot of toxins as well nowadays, and people don't know it, so they perform less well, even though they don't know that they're affected by it. So that's something that I need to open up people's eyes for as well.
And what brought you to this point today? Like, tell me your background. What's your story?
Oh, well, so when I grew up, I was one of the most allergic kids in Sweden, and we were at the ER every month because I got into anaphylactic shock and my throat swelled up so I couldn't breathe. And the doctors always said that there's nothing that you can do about it. You have to just learn to live with it. And my parents always had to be with me and ask, what kind of knife did you use? Did you clean it properly? And what kind of oil do you use when you're cooking and stuff like that? And I even had a nurse with me when I ate at the school restaurant. And so they were always ready to give me an adrenaline shot if anything were to happen. But then when I grew up, when I moved out of the environment that I grew up, my allergies disappeared. The doctors just said that sometimes that happens, and it's just called that it grows away, is what they say. But I didn't buy that, so I started doing my own research to find out why it disappeared and if I can make it disappear even more, because I still had allergies to pollen, for example, or horses and dogs. And so when I started fixing my gut, the bacteria that lived in my gut, everything got a lot better. And then I didn't have my allergies anymore. So I went a couple of years without my allergies at all. And so that's when I started to understand that there is things that we can do. And that's when I found, well, Dave Asprey, who was talking about mold in this case. And he said that everything that we put in our body affects how we perform and how we behave. And I just thought that, yeah, but like mold, that's something that you can see. That's something that if you see it, you remove it. So there's not a lot of people who are affected by it. But then in my early 30s, I bought a house with my ex-girlfriend. And as soon as I moved into the house, I started to feel like absolute crap. I was always a driven person before, started 5 businesses from scratch and always done a lot of working out. And all of a sudden I was just depressed, unmotivated. I didn't even want to go out of the bed. I didn't have any energy. And my brain just stopped working. I had so much brain fog that I couldn't even comprehend the things that I was reading. I couldn't take in new information. I couldn't understand what was happening, and it just came out of a clear blue sky. And then just a couple of weeks after we moved into the house, my ex-girlfriend, she collapsed unconscious on the floor. And so we went to the emergency room, and they just said that, well, she's probably overworked, she's not slept enough. And so I didn't know any better, and we just went home, and she didn't know any better either. But then 2 weeks after that, it happened again, and no one still didn't make any connections. So his family got mad at her, so they just said that you've been taking drugs, you're on ecstasy, stop lying to us. We know that people don't just collapse left and right, so there's something that you're doing, and you're overworked and everything. And I probably should have defended her more, but I was like, yeah, you probably should get some rest, you should probably work less. But in my head, it still didn't make any sense because she was working a lot less at the time than she was when I met her. So it shouldn't be better and not worse. But then the third time, a couple of weeks again after that, and this time they were like, no, they checked everything. They checked the EKG, they checked their vitamins and minerals, and they got blood, and they even sent her into an fMRI to scan her brain. And everything came back normal and fine. And they just said that you have to stop lying to us. You have to stop taking those drugs. And this is not normal, and this doesn't happen. Like, people don't just collapse left and right. And so I told her that go sleep on the second floor. At least that way you don't get disturbed by the kids and the dogs and everything else, so you can get proper sleep. And she went to sleep upstairs, and it didn't happen to her for 3 years. And so we kind of forgot about it, but I was still as depressed. I still didn't have any motivation. I still didn't have any will to do anything. I was even suicidal at times, which is completely unlike me. And everything that happened, every small little thing, like, pushed my buttons. I was like triggered by everything. I was more angry than I wanted to be, and I didn't recognize myself at all. And even the dog got sick by the mold, and she started attacking the other dogs out of just nowhere, which is also completely unlike her. And so 3 years after that, I collapsed on the bathroom floor. So I went up to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and I remember sitting down on the toilet, and then next thing I know, I wake up on the bathroom floor, and I just think that this was a really bad dream. Like, what happened? I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel any pain or anything. But when I opened my eyes, in front of me, I saw 3 of my front teeth. And then when I stood up, I looked into the mirror. I saw that my face was completely filled with blood. Yeah, I still just thought this was a dream. And so I went into my ex-girlfriend's bedroom, and I told her that she should probably get me to the hospital. And on top of this, it was in the middle of November, and it was 30 degrees below Celsius at this time. And someone else have to convert that into Fahrenheit, but it's really
I'm so glad
cold.
you said Celsius. Yeah, I don't do Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll have to convert it themselves. I have no idea.
Really freaking cold, anyway. And so I started to, how do you say it in English here, when you start
Shivering?
your teeth? Shivering, yeah.
Shivering.
Your teeth.
Yeah, chattering your teeth.
Yeah. So I didn't have any teeth, so I was shattering my under teeth into the roots of my teeth. And that hurt so bad that unlike anything I've experienced in my life. So that was a really traumatic experience. And when I get to the hospital, I get the same kind of thing that my ex-girlfriend did. There's nothing wrong with you. You look as healthy as can be. You're working out and you have a lot of muscles, and like, there's nothing wrong with your values anywhere. And then the head doctor, he told me that the thing with your teeth, that's only cosmetic. So like, there's nothing we can do about it. And I was like, what do you mean just cosmetics? It's like, this is not normal. This doesn't happen like to normal people. Like, you just collapse. And then after that, it didn't take so long to fix the teeth. At first, you can just put composite or plastics, and your teeth looks well. So it only took a day before my teeth were usable again. But then when I scanned my teeth, they saw that the roots were broken off. So the teeth would die if I left them there. So I have to pull 2 of the teeth, and we could save 2 of the teeth, so they have crowns now. And so that process took almost 2 years to extract the teeth, and then put in a new bone, and then put screws, and then put crowns onto that. And all during that time, I didn't have any teeth, so it was always like drooling blood, and it smelled like death in my mouth. And so during this time, I accidentally happened to meet my new girlfriend, who is now my wife. And I don't know if she got off on the teeth thing or anything, but my sister my sister said it best. She asked, "Is she blind?"
She could see your true being was radiating out.
Yeah, exactly. That's
nothing to do with your teeth. That's beautiful, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up.
Maybe that's what I need to do: smash my teeth out to find the right woman.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the best advice I can give you.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you know that they don't just like a pretty face.
Exactly. Exactly. And so anyway, obviously I had to move out of the house to be with my new girlfriend. And when I moved out of the house, it was like a completely new human being. I was back again. I bought a cabin that I was going to live with in case I didn't happen to meet a new girlfriend at the exact same time. And so, but since I did meet a new girlfriend, that cabin no one was going to live there. So I rented it out on Airbnb, and I opened a business, and like, I was completely back again, and I was motivated, and I was excited about life, and I was absolutely not suicidal at all. And then I made, just to confirm what happened, I made a urine test to test how much mycotoxins I had in my urine. And even after I moved out of the house, I had more than 100% more mycotoxins than regular people have in their urine. So obviously there was something with the house that we lived in. And like, looking back at it, it makes total sounds, and like someone with half a working brain cell could have figured it out faster than we did, but because the house is completely made out of wood and there's no isolation, there's nothing. The house is made from 1910, 1920s, and they didn't build the houses.
No, insulation, by the way. I just correct you there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, so there was mold, and we had a carpenter there to paint the outside of the house, and he was like, we have to fix this, we have to change this, because there's mold everywhere. So in retrospect, we could have, solved it faster and got rid of it faster. But you're also just completely brain dead when you are exposed to mold. Like, you can't think properly, you can't see the solutions that everyone else can see. Like, everyone that looked at us from the outside, they said that there was something wrong with the relationship. They said there's something wrong with the job that I had. There was something wrong with the gym that I had. There was like always something wrong with my lifestyle. And I ended up going to 5 different therapists during this time. We had a men's group in Gothenburg where I live. And all of those things helped a lot. They were awesome, and they helped me to deal with my childhood traumas and the fact that I was bullied when I was a kid and all of those things. But I was still equally suicidal the next day when I woke up. So that's when I understood that there's more to this. There's different parts of this, and they both have to come together to not be as depressed as I was. So that was a real eye-opener, but when I moved out of the house, I also understand that I can't be the only person in the world who has been affected by this way. There's got to be a lot of people who think they are depressed, who think they are anxious, have social phobia, and their guts are messed up, and they have brain fog, and they just accept it, and they just live life like that, just like the doctors tell them to do. So that's when I understood that someone has to do something about it. And if there's not enough people doing it, then the person that should do it might be me.
Wow. Yeah, that's some story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
It's pretty plenty of follow-up questions. Do you think which is worse, a colder climate or a warmer climate for mold?
I think Sweden has the perfect conditions for mold. So we have warm summers and cold winters, and when we go from winter to spring, there's like, it can be 30 degrees plus in the day, during the daytime, and at night it can be 20 degrees below zero, which is just perfect environment for mold.
So is that to do with, like, there's a lot of humidity in the air, and then that quick change to cool.
Yeah.
But the house doesn't dry like the air outside would.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the cold.
Yeah, it's a discrepancy between the inside and the outside. And the fluctuations are also a big part of it. Like,
and that's where you get condensation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and obviously here in the UK is quite similar, maybe not as extreme, and perhaps like, yeah, just as insidious as well, because it ends up being more hidden because it's maybe not as obvious. It's like somewhere with
you don't think about it, where it could be mold as well. Like, if you have warm summers again, you have probably air conditioning in your car, and the air condition gets cold, and then you stop the car and it gets warm again, so it gets moist. And then the next time you start the engine, you just blow out all the mycotoxins right in your face, and then you
no,
back and forth all the time. So that's also a good
fucking hell.
Yeah, and then if you have air conditioning inside your house, it's the same thing. And if you have air conditioning in office spaces, there could be one air conditioning, one office space, and then you just blow out mold all over the whole office space. And you affect 50 people at the same time.
Bloody hell. I just got a new car as well, and it's got air conditioning, which is lovely.
Yeah,
and now you've just ruined it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do you know, I was listening to you talk as well, and full transparency, I was just getting like major anxiety. You know, when like, it's like is it like the sympathetic response almost? I'm like thinking about this mold and kind of like, oh.
Well, I want to be like, we can fix this. I want to be positive.
Yeah.
Like, reaction, yeah.
Well, you've got to provide like the pain first, right? Give me some pain to stimulate enough, and then offer a solution. Okay. Let's stay on mold specifically. What are things that we can do to, one, check for mold, and two, combat it?
So it is tricky, but the thing that you most care about, like the thing that makes difference for you, is whether you have it inside of yourself. If there could be mold in your office, and there could be mold in your car, and all of those things, and that's not cool. But if you have it producing mold toxins inside of your own gut 24 hours a day, like, that's the most potent way to get incredibly fucked up very fast. So that's what I think that you should test first. Like, make a urine test from a laboratory that's unbiased. And the best one that I know is called Great Plains Laboratory. And so you measure the amount of mycotoxins that you have in your urine, and you also get to know which kind of mycotoxins you're exposed to. So there's different kinds. There's penicillium, for example. That's one kind of mold toxin, and there's aspergillus have another.
Did you say mycelium?
I said mycelium is one, but penicillium is
penicillium. Which is obviously where penicillin comes from, right?
Exactly. So
okay,
it comes from a mold toxin. I don't know if people know that. And so then they get to know which kind of mold toxins you're exposed to, and different kind of. You can take something called binders, activated charcoal and bentonite clay and cholestyramine, for example, are examples of binders. So you take them orally, and they get into your gut, and when they're in your gut, they bind to the toxins, and they pull it out the natural way, so to speak, instead of the toxins going into your bloodstream and going through your liver and your kidneys, and you have to detox it the old-fashioned way. So the way that
tell me,
go ahead.
Sorry, just to quickly interrupt. You mentioned some binders there. Can you just run over them again, because you spoke a little bit quickly?
I see.
For me, everyone else can probably took it, but I'm slow.
Of course. So there's something called binders, and when you ingest them orally, they go into your gut and they bind to toxins inside of your gut. Not only mycotoxins, but also toxins that we produce naturally from our bacteria in our gut that are a normal byproduct of making energy, like lipopolysaccharides, for example, and aldehyde, which is actually an alcohol that fungi makes. And if you have those bacteria and fungi inside of your gut, you're going to get toxins in your gut 24 hours a day. And things like activated charcoal, bentonite clay, cholestyramine, which is a prescription medication, but also psyllium husk and all kinds of fibers really bind to toxins inside your gut and pull them out. And to be really specific, they don't bind to the toxins, they bind to the bile. So bile is the thing that your liver produces and store in your gallbladder, and your gallbladder releases bile when there's something that is fat soluble in your digestive tract, and the toxins are fat soluble. So they bind to the bile, and if you recycle the bile over and over, you also recycle the toxins over and over. So if you can bind the bile and pull it out, so it ends up in the toilet, then your liver gets a chance to produce new bile that is free of toxins.
Okay, so let's just hover over that for a little while. So if we take a binder such as activated charcoal, that can allow, that will bind to the bile within your gut and allow it to clear out and then regenerate. Is that correct?
So
Are there any downsides? For, like, one of the things I was thinking of was like anti-nutrients, you know, like they say about things like certain types of vegetables or beans. Did that work in a similar way, or is it different?
As far as I'm concerned, that's still a completely different mechanism, because but bile is just the fat soluble things, and the defense mechanisms that plants have, they're there to kind of don't make you eat the plant, because they want to survive and they can't run away. So they have a mechanism so that you can't absorb the nutrients, and therefore in the future you don't want to eat them again. So if you don't absorb the nutrients, you don't want to eat them as much in the future again. That's gonna be bad idea.
So it's not. Is there certain foods where people say that the food actually absorbs minerals from your gut? I've heard that before. Is that not necessarily
the foods absorbs minerals from your gut?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that's kind of the way that the anti-nutrients work. They pull the nutrients from your gut, so you don't absorb them. And they can even pull minerals that you have absorbed earlier at another time, so that you actually depleted even more of nutrients by eating anti-nutrients, which is pretty messed up.
And just to be clear, that's totally separate to something like a binder that you mentioned previously.
Yeah, exactly. It's completely different. Both of them are negative consequences, of course, but they're working separate mechanisms.
Interesting. So I want to just rewind a little bit. So we're talking about getting a urine test for microtoxins. You recommended which lab?
There's one in the US. It's called Great Plains Laboratory.
Great
And that's
Plains
the best one
Laboratory.
that I know.
And do they do worldwide?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the way that it works practically is that they send you a bag, and in the bag there's a cup which you can pee in, and there's an ice pack, and then there's another bag, and there's a hazard bag, and then there's what do you call it? Insulation, so that it doesn't get destroyed. And there is a prepaid FedEx package that you can send it back. So you put the ice pack in the fridge, and then you stop taking binders, and you stop taking vitamin C and glutathione for a couple of days, so that you only use your body's natural way of excreting toxins, so you don't distort the results that you get. Because if you take something like glutathione or vitamin C, you can pull out a lot of more toxins from your stored fat stores, and that way you would get a worse result if you send that into Great Plains Laboratory. So,
and presumably, if we could also, I imagine Great Plains might be quite expensive if it's a worldwide thing, but just if someone searched microtoxin urine test, that should bring up something. But obviously, they would have to do their own due diligence on the.
Yeah, I paid $600 for it, and I say it's totally worth it. Every day, every week. For me, it was a lifesaver.
It's just getting your hands on the $600.
Yeah. But when you think also like all the things that I'm talking about, they still benefit you even if you don't have a result from Great Plains Laboratory that says you have been exposed to mycotoxins. Like everyone alive have more toxins today than we should have. And we have a lot more toxins than our forefathers have and our ancestors have. So everyone is going to benefit from taking activated charcoal. You don't need to take a test if you don't need to prove anything for yourself.
Oh, so there's no downside to taking activated charcoal?
Absolutely not. So the biggest reason why I took the test was to be able to prove to my future customers and clients and you that I was actually exposed to mold. So now we have proof. But if I was just going to say, oh, my girlfriend collapsed and I collapsed and my brain fucked up and everything, then no one would believe me. And they still don't believe me, but now at least they have a reason to believe me a little bit more. And so activated charcoal also binds to water and it binds to gas. So if you have gas after you eat, you can take activated charcoal and that will make the thing better. But it also binds to water, so it can make you constipated. So it's important to drink a lot of liquid, something that I hope you're doing anyway. But it's more important to take activated charcoal. And what I usually suggest to people is to take magnesium supplements at the same time.
Which form of magnesium?
I usually recommend glycinate just because it's the best absorbed, and glycinate is a part of making glutathione, which is our most antioxidant, so it helps the body to detoxify even more. But any form of magnesium works. Like if you're constipated and you go to the hospital or the ER, they give you magnesium citrate, for example, or citrate. So it ends the constipation pretty fast.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
Really? Yeah, and the results.
I didn't know magnesium citrate was a laxative.
Magnesium citrate.
Right? Yeah, it's easy to remember.
Yeah, exactly. But also, like, if you go to the ER or you drink like too much alcohol or being exposed to some other kind of toxins. One of the first things that they do is they put a hose down your throat and pour activated charcoal and down into your digestive tract to try to bind as much toxins as possible. So it's something that is still used even 10,000 years after it was discovered in medical care even. Very safe thing to do. And when you do that, it's like they use 200 grams, 300 grams of activated charcoal at once. And if you take a couple of pills with activated charcoal, you might end up taking 3 or 4 grams activated charcoal. So a lot more.
Say that again. If you take some pills,
you might end up taking like 3 or 4 grams maximum of activated charcoal. And if you go to the hospital, they can give you 300-400.
So, I see. Yeah, if you had it in capsule form, right? Got you.
So it's very safe to take even large amounts of these things. Just make sure that you're not being constipated by it. So try to do everything you can to not be constipated at the same time.
Constipated by the charcoal. Yeah, so you can take magnesium to
water. Yeah.
Yes.
And there's also a myth that activated charcoal binds to the minerals that we eat in our food, so you shouldn't take activated charcoal with your meals, or you shouldn't take it close to your meals. And most of the time what ends up happening is that people get paralyzed because they don't want to take their activated charcoal at all because they're so afraid that it's going to bind to the nutrients in their food. I've never seen that happen, and I've seen studies that say that it doesn't happen, that the molecules from B vitamins and minerals are too big to be expelled by the activated charcoal. So charcoal binds only to the toxins and not to the nutrients. And even if it ended up binding to the nutrients, that's still better than having toxins floating around in your brain.
And
so I don't think that's something that people should be afraid of. Just take your charcoal.
Okay, and obviously consult your medical doctor, all the rest of it, all the caveats. But also, I would say take a blood test, get a blood panel. Like, you don't have to get anything super fancy. Like here in the UK, you can get them online. Obviously, you can get them from the GP, but it won't be as detailed. And they start from about like £60 upwards, and obviously whatever you can afford. But I would say, and this is something I'm trying to get better at, if you're introducing a supplement, start to log what you're taking, when you started taking it, and take a blood test. So if you're taking, for instance, in this scenario, okay, I'm going to introduce activated charcoal. Make sure you get your blood done beforehand, and then maybe like a month afterwards, and then you can look, okay, how's my B12? How's my insert, fill in the blank? And then you can see for yourself that it's not changed it. Would you agree?
I totally agree. I would also log like how you feel, the difference that you notice in your mood and your energy levels and stuff like that. And because sometimes the blood test doesn't show everything, but they are a good start. It's a good indication, but there's more to it, in my opinion.
Yeah. While we're on this topic, because it's something I'm trying to get better at, but like, what's your approach to like tracking all these things? Because, for the regular person, having all, a spreadsheet with all these things, which by the way is the way I like to do it, but it's not for everyone. Like, what are some like handy ways that we can track it, or what's your approach?
So, with the risk of dissing off a little, I don't think that blood tests are always the best. Like, if I got to choose, if I have a client that says, I'm on a budget and I don't want to spend a lot of money on supplements and blood tests, I would say just get the supplements and screw the blood test, and keep track of how you're feeling, keep track of the consistency of your poop and how often you poop, and just how much brain fog you have, how you're sleeping. Like a cheap sleep tracker, I can tell you most of the things that you want to have, like a Whoop or an Oura ring, or a circular ring, and that can give you a lot of information, or a Fitbit, or any of those works. And a spreadsheet, you type doses and you type what you're introducing, what you're removing. And like, that's when I think I come into the picture. That's why I see there's such a big need for this, because everyone doesn't want to keep track of all these things. And so I know what to look for. I've been through this. I've gone through the whole process. Like, when I was trying to detox myself, it took several years longer than it had to do. And now I can heal people in 90 days, when it took me 4 years that I will never get back, like, wasted. And so I have consultations every second week, and I ask them, like, how are you feeling? Do you have more energy? Do you have less energy? How's your poop? How's your bloat? Are you less bloated? How's your face? Is it more bloated or less bloated? And all those things that I noticed in myself are indications to how much toxins and inflammation you're exposed to. And I don't need a blood test to confirm it. And then I can say, like, oh, we have more inflammation, then take more activated charcoal to bind to all the toxins, and then your inflammation will go down. And in the meantime, don't take any more vitamin C, so you're increasing your inflammation even more. And don't take glutathione, and don't take oregano oil and stuff like that. So that's where, if someone, like a regular person, is going to like battle all these things back and forth, it's going to end up really messy real fast. And so that's what I think.
I suppose, though, I would. Do you think the downside, though, of paying attention to like how you're feeling is that obviously there are a lot of variables there with placebo and nocebo and all the rest of these variables, and obviously we all have like a different level of self-awareness to our bodies. Like I've certainly noticed, like as I got more interested in improving my health and stuff, and removing toxins, I become more sensitive to how my body feels. But also for the regular person, there are so many things that could affect how you feel on the day. That then is it not useful to use a combination of metrics? And I think that maybe that's what you're saying, by the way, to be more objective.
Absolutely. If you can afford it, the combination is the absolute best. And the more data we can have, the better it is. It's always better to have more data than less data. But if I got to choose between having blood tests and having them spend the same amount of money on supplements, I would choose the supplements every day of the week. But also, if you're going to be like you perhaps, or someone that is really high performing and like really at the top levels, and you want to have like everything dialed down,
I don't know about that, but I thank you nonetheless.
Then you need to have blood tests, and you need to have like objective measures and HRV, and you can need to have a lot of things. But the people that I'm treating, they're like, I'm suicidal, depressed, unmotivated, and a week later, I can function like a normal human being. And then 2 weeks after, I ask, are you still functioning like a normal human being, or are you depressed and suicidal? And that's something that everyone can see. Like they don't need measures for that, because it's such a big discrepancy. And that's something that I did a lot wrong with myself in the beginning, because the toxins, first of all, our body try to detox them, of course, with our liver and our kidneys. But if they can't, they have to store them somewhere. So your body says, we can't get rid of all the toxins. There's too much toxins coming in, and we can't get them all out. We need to store them somewhere. And since they're fat soluble, they're stored in fat stores. And when all the fat stores are filled, then your liver is incidentally made out of fat. So you fill up your liver with toxins as well. And then the last place, when there's no other place to put it, is your brain. And that's when you get depression and brain fog and unmotivated, suicidal and stuff like that. And so you can pull out a lot of toxins from your stores, and you need to pull them out from your stores to bind them in your gut so you can get rid of them eventually. But if you pull out too many toxins at once, you get overburdened and you feel like absolute mega crap. And like that's what happened to me when I lived in the moldy house, and we collapsed. So I try to always make sure that they detox some toxins and pull some toxins out of their fat stores, but not too much. And the difference between a normal amount or a good amount and a too much amount, too high amount, is really clear and visible. Like they noticed in a day, if they have lower energy, if they feel like they don't want to do anything, like they just want to lie in bed for a day. And I can...
So just to clarify on that point, so what you're saying is, if you detoxify too quickly, the toxins are stored within fat, so therefore your body loses a lot of fat, and therefore you have less energy. It's nothing to do with like the gut microbiome.
No, not the way that I understand your question. No. So you have toxins stored in your fat stores, and when you pull the toxins out from your fat stores, they're in circulation. And when you have a lot of toxins in circulation, that's when you feel like absolute...
Oh, right. All right. So it's a bit like when you go for a massage and then you got like all these toxins floating around. You feel a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's exactly like that. But also that's why ultra mega obese people can be relatively healthy, even if you didn't think that they were, and because they have a lot of toxins, that all the toxins are stored in their fat stores. And when they're stored in fat stores and they're not being released because they're eating all the time, so they never need to release the fat stores, they can be reasonably happy. But if they were to release all those toxins stored in all those fat stores, they would die like that.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
I just want, you mentioned before about hydration. I need to pee. This is the downside. I'm like,
this is the part that we get out, right?
yeah, that like there's a guy, one of the coaches in the gym says I'm the most hydrated man in England.
Yeah,
I don't know about that, but yeah. So I'll just be 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I started looking at my Whoop data. No, I think I've had my Whoop for like, I don't know, like maybe 18 months. And it's difficult because I don't have any data before the Whoop. So basically, I think I notice like my overall trend, despite getting like, I'm in the best shape I've ever been in. I'm faster than I've ever been. I'm stronger than I've ever been. And yet, my HRV has slowly started to go down over time. My respiratory rate, a bit more stable, but that's also risen a little bit. My resting heart rate fluctuates a bit more due to like maybe how much cardio I'm doing. But again, in general, that's also started to rise a little bit. What's the other metric? There's one more, isn't there? But yeah, that gives you an overview. So, what the fuck's going on?
So if your body is like trying to ramp up your systems, like it raises your metabolism, it raises your heart rate, it raises your blood pressure potentially. I don't know if you track that, but all of those things.
I should, but I don't, but I should.
Yeah, it's an indication that your body is trying to get rid of all the things that it's trying to get rid of, potentially multiple toxins in this case. But it could be any kind of toxins, and we produce toxins inside of us. So even if they are not in the same situation as you are, we're still always being exposed to toxins. But the first thing that your body does is it's trying to ramp up your systems. It's trying to ramp up your metabolism. It's trying to detox more so you can get rid of everything. But then when people normally notice it is when your body says, stop, I can't. There's no way for me to get rid of all these toxins. My fat stores are filled up. My liver is filled up. There's more toxins coming in than we can get rid of. We need to slow down and conserve our energy. And that's when you get low motivation. That's when you get low energy. And that's when you get depressed. And all of those things that your body is trying to do to conserve the little amount of energy that you do have. So potentially that could be in store for you in the future if you don't do anything about it, which I hope you will.
Yeah, and I've also, for what it's worth, like blood panels may be related, but like my liver function is not very good. Is it like ALT? Creatine levels, stuff like that. So yeah, I've been told I'm actually at the moment I'm stopping taking creatine and then I'm retesting soon to take a look at that.
Yeah. I wouldn't draw any conclusions on the liver values alone. Like if you have everything in combination, then maybe, but the liver values can also be an indication that you have more muscles in your body. So it can go up when you take creatine, like you say, and also when you have more muscles in general.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's hover over that one actually. So one of my friends said to me, he said, "Oh yeah, I was the same, and I stopped taking creatine, and then I got tested, and then it cleared up, and then I just don't take creatine now." would you say that maybe that's not a sensible approach?
There was a hasty conclusion, yeah. So, but just because you take in creatine and the liver values goes up doesn't mean that your liver is fucked. It just means that your liver values went up. So it could just be that your liver is fine and you can take creatine and just have high liver values and there's nothing wrong with it, or there's nothing potentially dangerous at all with it.
And so at what point would you see an issue potentially with the liver? Like what mark are you looking for there?
The only way to get a reasonably decent conclusion of what is happening with your liver is to do a biopsy. And so I know a lot about this because the woman that I was living with in the Mould house, she incidentally had autoimmune disease where her liver was being attacked, so she always had high liver values. But when they did biopsies, they did that once a month on her. It was always fine.
Wow. So a liver biopsy, also, like you're cutting the liver open, right?
Yeah.
Wow, once a month.
Yeah,
fucking hell.
So it's kind of a spear that you put in the liver, and then you push a button, and it's desiccates a bit of your liver, and you pull it out, and then the liver regenerates and restores itself. You can lose 95% of your liver, and it will still generate back to 100% if you give it enough time. So she didn't make a big hassle of it. She said she didn't even feel it.
Okay. Interesting.
But about the other values, I don't think you can just draw a conclusion just based on them, because she did take those values as well, but it was always the biopsy where you can actually see, is there fat, is the liver damaged in any way? And usually it's not. Like, the liver is really capable of dealing with a lot of toxins. There are alcoholics that can drink a lot of alcohol for 50 years and the liver is still fine. A lot of other organs in your body are not fine, but the liver is still fine. And I thought that my liver would be fucked up after I lived in a moldy house. And also what happens when you live in a moldy house or get exposed to a lot of other toxins is that you have a gut microbiome, and it's supposed to be some part good bacteria and some part bad bacteria. But if your immune system is always busy trying to get rid of the mold toxins or mycotoxins, then the bad bacteria can take over. So they're called opportunistic bacteria because they take the opportunity when your immune system is busy. And then they take over the small intestine, for example, which should be sterile. And then they get up into your throat and your nose, and then you get ear infections and nose infections and sinus infection, and you get a white tongue and thrush. It's called thrush when you have a white tongue because fungi is living there. And a lot of people live like this their whole lives. And when I was a kid, I was always stuffed in my nose. Now that I cleared out my microbiome, it all cleared up as well. So. But what happens when they're living in places where they shouldn't be? A normal thing when they're making energy is that they produce toxins as a byproduct of making energy. So the higher amount of bacteria that you have, the more toxins you're going to create. So if you have a lot of extra bacteria in your small intestine, for example, that's going to produce a lot of extra lipopolysaccharides, for example, which is the most common toxin that we produce in our gut, and that will destroy the inside of your gut lining, get leaky gut, and then when you have leaky gut, the toxins can pierce into the bloodstream, and then they circulate into your brain, and there's just a vicious cycle of bad things that happens when you get exposed to mold. It's not just the mold itself. That's what triggers the whole process, but what is actually doing the most amount of damage is the opportunistic bacteria that takes over when they get a chance, because your immune system is always busy the mycotoxins. And I got fungi, I got candida, I got small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. I had chronic diarrhea for years because I was exposed to the mold. And that's how it all started. But so practically the things that you have to solve after you get exposed to mold, it's not just get rid of the mold and detox your body from mold. That's the first step. But then you have to take care of all the damage that happened to your body after that. So you have to fix your gut, you have to fix your small intestine, you have to fix your digestion, and then you have to give all the nutrients back, which all of the bacteria and fungi stole from you before. And then you have to fix your mitochondria, which is the powerhouses in your cells that make energy, because they get damaged as well from mycotoxins. And ochratoxin A, for example, which is the most common mycotoxin, directly destroys part of your hippocampus, so you can't make enough dopamine. So that's another reason why you get unmotivated and low energy. And that's like part of your brain that is destroyed. It's not just that you don't have the raw materials like tyrosine and vitamin B6 to make dopamine. You have that as well. But you also have parts of your brain that are literally destroyed. And that needs time and energy and nutrients to rebuild itself. And that can take years.
Wow.
So did I scare you enough?
Yeah, you can say that. Just moving back slightly a little bit. So we're talking about like a moldy house, for example. What about the actual house? Can you do anything about it?
The best thing to do is to just cut out the piece that is moldy and replace it with a new piece that is not moldy. But the thing is that it's hard to see. Like, it can be, if you see it, you are potentially doing something about it. Like, that's the conclusion. Mm-hmm. But if it's in your bathroom behind the drywall and there's a leak in a pipe, you don't see it, you don't smell it, you don't know that it's there. Like, I don't even know in the house where exactly the mold was. Like, it's so hard to find. Like, sometimes it can be hidden for years.
What about like you know, testing like the atmosphere with like a moisture detector? Would that be useful?
All of those things are useful, but they're absolutely not even far from 100% perfect. So I have a friend, for example, who lives nearby, and his house is also like really old. He bought it from his great-great-grandpa. And when you get in there, like, you can smell the mold from 100 miles away. And every time I go from that house, my girlfriend tells me, like, oh, you've been at your friend's house again. And he says that when he has meetings, everyone says that, oh, is it mold here? And he knows that it's just mold on his cloth that is giving the smell. So there's 100% mold in his house. And so they took an expert there to check. So usually they do something called an EMRI, environmental mold relative index. So you check the amount of mycotoxins that you have in the air inside the house, and then you compare it to the air outside of the house. And if it's relatively more mycotoxins inside of the house, then you can conclude that there's mold in the house. But even in that house, he made the conclusion, the professional, that there's no mold in the house. And so I don't know how he came up with that conclusion. He said that there was the same amount of mycotoxins in the air inside the house as it was outside of the house, but like I can clearly smell the mold there. And I can even go into the house and get brain fog. Like, I can induce brain fog on myself in 2 hours time. That's how much mold toxins there is there. So I don't want to pick on anyone in particular. Like, he's a really good friend of mine, but his family has gained like 300 kilograms together after they moved into that house, and I'm pretty sure it has to do with the mold. So, but he
Wow.
doesn't want to do anything about it if an expert says that, and there's nothing to do.
So okay, so let's say you have a test done. There is mold in the house. You can confirm it, that there's toxins, in the atmosphere.
So the way the best way to describe it is that if you have an expert that bangs on the pipes, he knows what he's doing. Basically, he can steer up the mold. So if there's mold on top of the bookshelves, for example, when there gets a lot of dirt at the same place, that can create mold. And yeah, if you know where to look for mold, you're going to find it, even if someone who's a professional might not find it, basically. So you have to have the right person check for mold. But let's say that you know that there's mold, and you don't exactly know where it is, or for some other reason you don't want to remove it or do something about it. Opening the windows is a really great idea, and also having an air cleaner is a good idea. And just
when you say a cleaner, everything. Is that different from a humidifier, or is that the same thing?
It is different.
Okay.
A cleaner could have an activated charcoal filter in it, for example. So you pull the air in, and it goes through an activated charcoal filter, and then the air comes out potentially cleaner. And all of those things are better than nothing.
Definitely. Could you still use an air cleaner and have the window open?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
All things in combined makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So it adds up, and all of the things makes it better, but not perfect. And if you think about it, mold is not something new. It didn't show up in the 2000 now. We've had mold for thousands of years, but it's being diluted in the air around us. So if you're sleeping next to a moldy tree, or a tree bark, for example, out in the wood, it's still the same amount of mycotoxins that you're being exposed to, but it's being diluted with trillions of liters of air around you. So it isn't as toxic for you when you.
So that's why obviously
the windows makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
But if it's minus 30 degrees Celsius, that becomes a little bit more problematic.
Yeah, you have to prioritize.
Yeah, I think I've not seen it that cold here. I think that the coldest I've ever seen it in the UK was minus 17, minus 14 years ago. But yeah, we to be honest as well, since global warming, it's rare we get below freezing at the moment.
Oh, nice. But what is the reason why someone would not want to get rid of the mold if they know they have mold?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah.
What reasons would they not want to get rid of it? No, I don't think there's any reason someone wouldn't want to get rid of it. But I suppose if there's there's a financial element, or for instance, if for example they just couldn't move from that house, I suppose that would be the only restriction that I can think of.
You wouldn't want to sell it necessarily to someone else to get the same kind of problems that you have either, but if you can find the mold and it's this big, and you can just buy new drywall and replace it, it takes 5 minutes, and your environment is a lot cleaner, and you solve the problem potentially forever. But the hard thing, I guess, would be to find it. If it's behind a wall, for example, then it would be more problematic.
Yeah, interesting. So one of the things, so let's just talk about what mold is doing And is like so you mentioned about like dogs a dog would start to attack people or whatever. Is there like it is the toxin like taking over the brain so that it then infects other people? Is it like, have you seen Last of Us? Is it like yeah, does that make sense?
First of all, I know it's true for dogs as well, because dogs or all animals is mostly, like, a lot of times it's the first thing that you noticed, because you don't notice as much in yourself as you say, but you can see it easier in others, and dogs, they behave really weird when they're exposed to mold. And the oldest dog that we had, it was a Saint Bernard, and he literally had mold growing out of his head. So it's like mold here. It was like,
oh wow,
like this big.
Fucking hell.
And then he passed away from it eventually. But it's not like the mold is like attacking your brain, or it's not like you becoming a zombie. But all the toxins, regardless of what kind of toxins, but mold toxins in this case, they activate your immune system, and your immune system requires energy, and the more toxins you have, the more energy you need to expend on dealing with the toxins. And if all your energy goes to the toxins, not enough energy can go to the brain. And when the brain doesn't have enough energy, that's when you get cranky, that's when you get easy irritable, and that's when you get depressed and unmotivated, and you can literally induce low motivation and depression in someone just by detoxing them too fast.
Wow.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay, so let's say we've looked at the house, we've found the mold, we've had maybe like a damp expert or a mold expert come in, we've replaced the bit of the wall, we've painted everything up, we're monitoring the moisture levels, we've got that, and we've got that underway. We've started taking activated charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to feel a little bit better. What else should I do? Is it just like over time, just start to...
So all the time, 24 hours a day, you're burning some amount of fat, like reasonably, if you're not gaining fat all the time. And every time you're burning your fat, you're releasing the toxins that are stored in the fat. So therefore, there's always some amount of toxins inside of your gut, in your digestive tract. And so if you then take activated charcoal, you can bind those toxins, so you can poop them out. And the toxins that you can't bind, your liver and kidneys can deal with. And over time, the more of the toxins you can pull out from your fat stores. And now that you fix the house, you don't fill up your fat stores anymore, and you don't get exposed to more. So eventually you will have empty fat stores and empty digestive tract. And then you will only have potentially pathogenic bacteria that has taken over while you were being exposed to the toxins. And so you can take vitamin C, N-acetyl L-cysteine, NAC, and combine those two.
Oh yeah, NAC.
Or NAC. Or take glutathione, which is the liver's master antioxidant, and you can take magnesium to pull things out of the fat stores into your digestive tract, so that you then can bind to the activated charcoal and poop it out. So you can speed up the process, but if you speed up the process, you run the risk of having too much toxins, but then you can increase the amount of activated charcoal instead, so you bind to all the toxins, and then you just keep doing it. You keep releasing the toxins, and then you bind them, and then you release some more, and then you bind them, and you go on like that until you don't have any more, or don't have a significant amount of toxins, because you're always going to have toxins. We're human being living in a world where there's toxins everywhere, so you're always going to have some small amount of toxins, and then there's always some small amount of mycotoxins even in food. So you're always going to get a little. And the way that if you want to be like the top notch dog, you can take butter and saturated fats. And the more saturated fats you eat, the more you can replace your old fat cells that are potentially filled with polyunsaturated fats and toxins. You can excrete them. And when you're excreting them, you're going to feel worse because you're releasing all the toxins. But the more saturated fats you eat, you can replace the old bad cells with new good cells. And that way, potentially, you would get rid of the most amount of toxins. So if you imagine a glass of water and you have paint, or what do you call it, caramel paint, like the one you have when you're making food coloring, food.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Like a caramel coloring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So first it's just at the top of the water, but then it spreads more and more, and more, and then eventually it fills the whole glass, and the whole glass is filled with a color when it was just clear water to begin with. And taking binders is like taking a pipette. Is that how you say it? And pull water out.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a squeezy thing. A pipette.
Yes, basically. Yeah. And you pull out water, and that way it's really hard to make the whole glass clear again. You understand what I mean?
So the caramel coloring in this example, that's the toxin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the water is the fat.
Water is a fat cell. Yeah, and that's how toxins spread in our body, because all our cells, they have a membrane around them, and that is made out of fat. So that when they touch each other, they spread to each other. So it's just like the food coloring, that it spreads in the glass. And you can try to pull it out, like you need to try to pull out all the color from the glass, but it's not going to make the glass completely clear. But what you need to do is that you need to dilute the water with new fats. And the more water you add, and the more you can add water without food coloring in it, the clearer the water is going to get. So eventually the glass is going to be completely clear if you don't put any new toxins in it. So that's the best way to do it if you want to replace all your fat cells.
So what we're saying is, just to recap that, the pipette example of just taking the water that's mixed with the fat, sorry, the water that's mixed with the coloring, or the fat that's mixed with the toxins, that's like the binder.
Okay.
So it does help, but obviously it's not the full solution. The full solution is to make sure you're eating plenty of saturated fat to replace those things.
Yeah.
That leads me on to my next question, is saturated fat. So interestingly enough, when we're looking at biomarkers, my LDL and my triglycerides are like really high. And of course, the traditional model here in the UK and in most places is LDL cholesterol bad. You want to get rid of it. Obviously, there is lots of conflicting opinions around that, such as like ApoB. So it's not LDL. You should look at your ApoB number. I don't know my ApoB number because that's not a standardized test. And then someone in the carnivore world will argue further, say there's nothing wrong with ApoB. It's to do with your insulin resistance. That's the thing that causes that, and the atherosclerosis. But recently, I think I got a little bit scared because I feel a little bit alone in like, yeah, well, I'm eating all this red meat and I'm fucking smashing it. I feel great. I'm lifting more. I'm running more.
Nice,
Give me
nice.
more ribeye steak. But when your blood markers are coming up and then, you know, I guess you just want to do the right thing. And when there's so many people saying you're going to get cardiac disease if you're going to have these high numbers, how should we look at these things? What's your opinion, etc.?
Yeah, so that example is a direct quote from the Gasperi, so I don't want to take credit for something that I didn't say. I want to give credit where credit is due. But regarding the saturated fat and LDL, so the way that I understood it is, first of all, there was a big study that was done, and they looked at people who had high LDL and people who had the lowest amount of LDL, and the people who had the highest amount of LDL died more often, basically. But there was a lot of examples from that study that didn't get into to get to be in the study because they didn't fit the pattern, basically. And so that's funny that they chose 7 countries that all had high LDL and people died, but there was other countries that had high LDL but didn't die. But those didn't get to end up in the study.
Do we know like what kind of countries they were? Give me an idea.
The study is really famous, and I should know the name of it right now, but I'm blanking. So
maybe we can link it in the show notes. Like if you send me it later, I'd be interested to look at it.
Brainstorm. I have it here in my bookshelf. Anyway, and so the way that they concluded that high LDL was bad was that people who had high LDL also died. But just because you have high LDL and you die more often doesn't mean that LDL is bad.
Correlation is not causation.
Yeah, it could also mean that someone was about to die and the LDL was coming to save the person, was trying to save the person that failed. And that's why they had high LDL when they died. So the LDL was trying to save the situation. So for example, when you have arteries, your arteries get damaged all the time and blood is passing through, and you get small microscopic holes. And when you get small microscopic holes, LDL is being shot there to patch up the hole. And the more you damage the walls, the more LDL gets there, and eventually you build up like a mold. A plaque of mold of LDL. So now the blood can't get through, and so that's when you get a heart attack or a stroke. And so then you could conclude that the LDL was the reason why they got a heart attack and a stroke, because the LDL was in the way, so the blood couldn't pass through. But in reality, LDL was trying to save the person from getting a burst in their blood vessel. And the problem from the beginning was that they were damaging the blood vessel so much. So if they didn't damage the blood vessel, LDL wouldn't have to come there to try to patch up all the damage all the time.
And where is the damage coming from?
Well, we're always being damaged, like if you just blood is passing through, like if toxins is passing through, that makes even more damage, but just blood passing through or having higher blood pressure, of course, is going to damage the walls even more. But
because there's more pressure on the pipe, it's more likely to break.
Exactly. Yeah, and so we're supposed to always heal those small holes all the time. If you have enough collagen, which is what blood vessels are mostly made of, and most of our body, or most of the proteins in our body is collagen, but no one is eating ligaments and tendons and skin nowadays, so we get the deficiency of collagen and protein. So yeah, we can't repair the blood vessels, and then LDL have to come there. So in that case, you could also say that you had high LDL and the person died. So in that case, yeah, high LDL was bad because it made them die, but it wasn't LDL's fault necessarily. It was because LDL was trying to save them from something completely different, which they didn't have to have if they ate enough collagen or vitamin C or whatever to heal their arteries.
Wow. I'd never heard this perspective.
Cool.
So interesting. So
also, there's a lot of perspectives about LDL, like just the sheer fact that you're eating saturated fats, and saturated needs a transport vehicle in your body to deliver energy, and that is LDL. So you're increasing your LDL just by eating saturated fats, and that's not necessarily bad. It just means that you have more energy from fats than you did before.
So, okay. So if we looked at something like insulin resistance, also known as pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, your body stops responding to insulin because there's just so much of it around, and then obviously it stops taking nutrients in as well as a side effect. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're saying is, if you are, let's just use the example, let's say pre-diabetic, as for the sake of this next example, you're pre-diabetic. Is it the side effect of the excess blood glucose which is going to cause damage to the blood vessel walls, and or is it because of the side effect of having high glucose levels means that you're going to have high blood pressure, which means that you're going to get damage?
Mm-hmm. So like having high blood pressure can come from having high blood sugar, and having high blood pressure would lead to your intestinal or your blood arteries walls getting damaged faster. Where the insulin resistance or the pre-diabetes or even diabetes comes from in the first place is also something that is up for debate. But my theory is that it does not have to do necessarily with the high blood sugar at all, which might be a little bit controversial. But I think that we should be able to have high blood sugars and then regulate down the blood sugar again because we're making so much energy from the sugar, just like a kid can do. They can eat a lot of candy and then they can use the sugars and get their blood sugar to normal levels and make energy out of it. But when you get older and you get exposed to toxins, and I think also bad fats has a lot to do with it. Or just your mitochondria, the powerhouses in your cells, stops working. If the powerhouses in your cells can't make energy, then you can't pull the sugars from the bloodstream into the cells, and that's what we call diabetes. So if you don't have proper functioning mitochondria, then you get diabetes.
What's a common symptom of non-functional mitochondria?
So mitochondria is what makes energy for everything. So basically, you can get symptoms everywhere. But when you get exposed to mold toxins, for example, the reason why you have symptoms is partly because it damages your mitochondria so much. So what I had was brain fog. Your brain stops working when cells in your brain doesn't get enough energy. Your eyes starts stops working, so you get bad vision, and your digestive tract stops working, so you get constipated, and you can't absorb the nutrients, and you don't have any energy. You get depressed and anxious. A lot of the things that a lot of people have normally nowadays, just like you could think that it's just normal symptoms from just being older or normal aging. But these things, you can fix your mitochondria. It can help your mitochondria to regrow and be able to make energy again. But anything in the whole world, and back pain, like headache and sleep disturbances, insomnia, everything that requires energy, it can take a beating if your mitochondria isn't working.
Are you familiar with Peter Attia?
Yeah, the first step.
So one of the things, just rewinding a little bit to the LDL thing, he said to, I think he was talking to Rhonda Patrick, and he said his argument for why we should be lowering ApoB / LDL, ApoB with pharmacology, his argument was, yeah, I think, yeah, which let's put a pin in that. Let's talk about statins too. His example was that if you take like an infant or a toddler, they have no LDL. So, and he was responding to, say, someone like Paul Saladino, who'd be saying that we need this for energy and stuff. So he'll say, well, why doesn't a child have LDL? But I feel like what you're going to say is because the LDL is about repair, and that's something we need later in life.
Unfortunately, yeah.
What do you think about that?
Like LDL has a lot of things. Like LDL is not even, like we say LDL is cholesterol, but it's pretty far from cholesterol. LDL is a protein, and it transports different things in your bloodstream that are fat soluble, because fats can't be transported in water, which our arteries are water. And that's why we need LDL. And it's not right to call it cholesterol, because cholesterol is just one thing that's being transported on the LDL protein. And also,
what about, sorry to interrupt. Okay. What about ApoB specifically? I'm just checking. Are we splitting those things out? Or are we talking about it separately?
I think it makes sense that different sizes of particles can have a huge difference, yes. So I'm not arguing with that at all. I think that is probably the best measure that we can have, like Peter Attia says.
So so pay attention to a high ApoB number is problematic, you would say?
I would say it's probably the best indication, yes. I would also like to add that in a lot of cases, but not in all cases, high LDL is a warning signal. Like, you should raise your eyebrows if you have high LDL. And because I've had high LDL my whole life, and I've always justified it because, like, the energy and it's my genes, I always have it, so I can't do anything about it. And incidentally, LDL also helps when you're detoxing and when you're being exposed to mold toxins and stuff like that. So when I detoxed from mold, I saw my LDL go down, even if I was doing keto and high fats. And so I know you can have low LDL even if you're eating a lot of fat. And a lot of people just justify having high LDL when it could be toxins that are contributing.
Yeah, fucking hell, right. Yeah, right, yeah. So what we're saying is actually as well, and other people probably came to this example much earlier, probably came to this realization much earlier than me, but it's just kind of like light bulb. So what we're saying is LDL is perhaps a warning signal, but not in the way you think of it. It may be because it's going like, let's fucking fix this. Like, so you have more in your bloodstream. Yeah. I come to things slow, but once I get them, I will become obsessive and learn more than most.
Yeah, I agree. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, and the particle size, if anything, is what we should be worried about, like ApoEb, for example, like the TSS.
Continuous glucose monitoring. Should we be doing it?
I think it makes sense to know your blood glucose. It can tell you a lot of things, even though as I said, I think that we should be able to have our blood glucose go down a couple of hours after we eat. But if you have a continuous glucose monitor for a month, for example, you can see how high it is, and you can see in real time what happens when you eat a different kind of food. I think
you know what it feels like to have a sugar rush.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the best thing I got from it.
Yeah, you should be able to eat ice cream and drink milk and eat rice, which has higher glycemic index to sugar, and then get back to baseline pretty fast again. But if you notice that you don't, then you can see that there's something that needs improvement here. So, and you can do it the old-fashioned way. Like I had a glucose monitor and I stuck myself 20 times a day for months.
With the pin bit, the finger thing.
But knowing your blood glucose is a really good thing, and it's the best indication that we have whether you're going to get diabetes type 2 or not. And diabetes type 2 contributes to all the 4 major killers, so it makes sense to keep track of it.